Today's episode of the InsideEVs podcast is brought to you by E-Range EV Tyre. E-Range EV tyres are specifically engineered for electric vehicles. Using an advanced manufacturing process called liquid phase mixing, E-Range EV's EcoPoint 3 technology creates a tyre with lower rolling resistance and longer range, while offering low levels of wear and high grip. All this while staying affordable. Go to erangetires.com. That's ERANGE tyres.com to find your EV's next set of tyres.
Hello and welcome to the first Inside EVs podcast of 2024. We are down one Alex Goy this week. He's not a well man, so we are wishing him back to health as soon as possible. And I'm Hazel Southwell. I'm stepping into the role of random British person assigned hosting the podcast for the week. And with me is the boss man, Patrick George, and Lacey Misco Electric, which I think we're all like roughly in the normal places that we are for or like at home for actually doing this edition.
Yes.
After quite a sort of whistle stop tour of various EVs and most of America, as far as I can tell.
I had 2 straight weeks of doing this inside of a car with the Wi-Fi on, and now that I'm doing it in not a car, it feels weird. And maybe I should try and make that a thing more often. Because you get a nice car, modern car these days with Wi-Fi, and it's a great place to work. You know, it's better than an actual office, I think. You know, as long as you can find parking. Also, I think that this whole team today is battling varying levels of crud from the holidays. Like, there's me, there's Hazel. It already took Alex off the map. Lacey seems healthy as ever, but would just bear with us if we all
I don't know how. Yeah.
Yeah. If we all sound varying degrees of terrible. So, you know, so it goes.
Yes, which is exactly the right state and fitness to get stuck into some interesting figures, because it's the January sales report special. There have been the 2023 figures from lots and lots of automakers, of course, and we're going to run through a few of them, starting with Tesla. So Tesla reported that in Q4 of 2023, they delivered 484,507 vehicles, which brings them up to 1.8 more million deliveries for the whole year. So it's a new record for them for total deliveries in Q4 2023. Of course, there were some notable sort of like releases of vehicles that they had in that final sector, but it's almost exclusively Model 3 and Model Y. Like, they're still accounting for the vast majority of Tesla's sales. What do we think about this? Is this like Tesla's continued?
I think the funniest thing here was that just the Model S, which is, I think, maybe the most important car of the 21st century to date, is now listed under other models on their like 5-digit sales report, like just really just unceremoniously kicked into the trash, that car. And like the Model X, I think it was, you know, it was neat. It was always a bit of a misfire in some ways, but like the S is important, and those two are just like non-entities in terms of Tesla sales now. It is the Model 3 and Model Y company, and the Cybertruck is so new that it's like I think I probably moved like 20 by the end of the year or something. Like, not even enough to say. Yeah. I
mean, for perspective, the proportion of, so when we say the vast majority were Model 3, Model Y, of those deliveries, so 484,507 deliveries total. Of that, 461,538 were Model 3 and Model Y. So only just under 23,000 of anything else.
I mean, the Model Y and the Model 3 are such great cars, and considering the price point, it doesn't surprise me. It's just so, like Patrick was saying, like the Model S is such a great looking car even to this day, even though they've done minimal to like do refreshes and things like that. And I think, offering the Plaid is great. Supposedly there's supposed to be like a Plaid Plus coming, and even the Model Y, the Juniper version, and the Model 3 refresh are supposed to come to the United States hopefully this year. But I think the Model S, I think people are realizing that there are a lot of vehicles in this segment as far as options go, and more people are prioritizing, not only the price point, but also, can we just like not with the performance figures all the time? Like,
yeah,
I love that we're proving something, that it is like one of the fastest cars, period. But I think we're starting to see more and more people are prioritizing when switching to an EV to range more than anything. So I hope that in this upcoming year they can do more. And I know the new EPA figures just came out for Tesla, had just published, like Model S was originally, I think for the long range version, 390 some odd miles. And now with the new EPA cycle, it's gone down to like 350, something like that. So with these different cycles of testing and the range figures adjusting to kind of feel a little bit more realistic as far as what people's commute would be normally, I think we should hopefully see more advancement in the battery chemistry and the range and efficiencies, and Tesla is a leader in efficiencies, no doubt. But can we just start prioritizing range?
It's
Please and thank you.
Yes, it's range. It's price too, and it's like Kevin Williams on InsideEVs had a story about yesterday. It was like, excuse me, there's the crud again. You'd say what you want about Elon and Tesla and the ride quality and the interior, but those cars are unbeatable values. They just are. And with the Chevy Bolt going away this year, it's like there's no better value for a car. I mean, you could get, Model 3 for under 30 grand with tax incentives. You could get a Model Y, low 30s with that charging network. I mean, it's just I don't blame anybody for going that route. Like it's still an unmatched deal. And that was reflected in these sales figures. And like, like to Lacey's points, like, these crazy 0 to 60 times are great, and but it's just what we're entering the phase where this stuff needs to be more focused on real people's needs, and that's where Tesla's winning right now. I don't see that changing this year at all.
Yeah.
No, and I think to kind of bounce around manufacturers here, but of GM's sales reports, so GM would have loved to have sold anything like close to Tesla's figures, of course, but over 2023, which confusingly I've written 2024 here, but that can't possibly be true. I'm so bad at this. The GM sold 75,883 EVs total.
But
the Bolt, as Patrick just referenced, they discontinued as of December, accounted for 62,045 cars, and only 13,838 of them were this new Ultium system that they're investing billions in and building gigantic factories for. And actually, it was even more extreme in Q4 alone, when there was 19,469 EVs sold, of which the Bolt EV and the Bolt EUV accounted for 12,551, which is actually a significant less, or it's fewer Bolt cars than were sold in Q4 2022, but it's still the vast majority of GM's electric cars being sold.
To break this down, it's like, on the plus side, GM had a record year of EV sales. They're doing great. They sold a ton of EVs. On the not so great side, like 90-something% of those sales were the car that just got discontinued, that they were losing a ton of money on, and is a great EV, but like spec-wise is not competitive anymore in a lot of ways. Meanwhile, as you said, Hazel, like the fancy new platform they're investing their entire future in, the number of cars they sold was like almost a statistical irrelevance. And we end the year on the stop sale for the Chevy Blazer. So, I mean, it was a great year for the Chevy Bolt. Was it a great year for GM? I'm not sure yet. I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, some of the Ultium models, the numbers are so the Silverado EV and the Blazer EV sold 3-figure numbers. In fact, under 500 in Q4 2023. Versus
and those are like just
Bolt.
starting to ramp up, but still, I mean, like, this is why it's so tragic. If you've been listening to us for the past few weeks, you know our sadness that Ultium has not been what it was promised to be, and has not gone smooth as far as the launch of that platform. So it's just a really sad thing. I am happy for the Bolt though, but it's just like also bittersweet because it's leaving us. I think that Bolts will do really well in the used market this year with the tax credit, for the used tax credit under 25 grand. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting because GM is kind of copying Ford in a lot of ways because they're offering a $7,500 discount, right? Because I think all of their products for this first quarter so far are not qualifying for the tax credit, but they said that they're going to make some adjustments so that there will be some kind of credit, hopefully the full $7,500 once they get that sorted out. But they got some work to do, that's for sure.
Yeah. We're going to talk more about tax credits in a second, but actually this is a smart move by GM. It's like they got just hammered by the lack of tax credits when the rules changed this year that they're just like, screw it, we're going to do discounts for every EV to the tune of $7,500, and good for them. I mean, it's a smart move. We'll see how many cars they can actually get on dealer lots and working right, but like I think that's the wise play for them for now. It also, to me, begs the question: why not just keep the Bolt going? Like, sure, they were losing a few $1,000s on each one, but it's General Motors. They can afford it, right? They sell so many Escalades and Silverados. It's like, I would just keep the Bolt going another year or two and just take a bath on it, and why not, right?
Yeah, I mean, it seems a real shame for something, because again, the reason the Bolt is selling is the same reason the Model 3 is selling, and the Model Y is selling, which is that they are at a price point that people can afford, where you're no longer contemplating really a huge price trade-off to get an EV, and the price barrier is a major, or it's something that is a major barrier to people adopting EVs, and it just seems because they must be losing money on Ultium models as well right now. So
I think that I have to assume the answer is yes, right? But like Mary Barra said, like the focus at Ultium is on profitability, like profitable EVs, which explains why the Blazer is like 63 grand. I guess that's the goal here, but it's so new that I just can't imagine that they're like printing money margin wise. And what's interesting too is like, if you're listening to this, you might ask, why don't you three jokers know that? It's because car companies never want to talk about how profitable or not profitable individual models are. Like that's a huge competitive advantage to give away to somebody else. We know anecdotally like big trucks, SUVs, very profitable because the margins you can get there, but like getting the details, we don't really know. Like I remember Ford once told me like the Mustang happens to be a profitable model for them because they sell so many of them. But beyond that, that's your guess is as good as ours. So I think it's going to be an interesting thing to keep an eye on this year. How did Ford net out in this whole thing last year?
I was going to say, moving on to Ford. So Ford became the number 2 electric car manufacturer in the US for Q4 2023, because it managed to sell a huge 25,937 EVs, which is obviously a long way off Tesla's numbers, but is more than GM's. Yes, they take that title, and their overall figures for 2023 are 72,608. So GM did beat them overall, but just not specifically in Q4. Of that, 40,771 were the Mustang Mach-E, 24,165 were the F-150 Lightning, and 7,672 were the E-Transit, the van. These are still very small numbers, aren't they?
Lacey, what do we think here?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great for Ford to be able to say that they are number 2 in the U.S. market, especially considering how well Hyundai Kia Group has done with their EV lineup. I think both of those are really great cars, and especially the Lightning. Like, the deals that you can get that I'm seeing right now on the Lightning are just wild to me, and I am surprised but also not surprised at the same time, because I feel like more people should be buying that truck, but also I understand like money right now is so challenging, but they are offering so many discounts, like the $7,500 that we just talked about, that GM is kind of like copying Ford at this point, because they this past month put that basically that incentive down right before you purchased, because they wanted to be able to get more out the door. But I just, I'm excited for Ford because they only have really like the E-Transit is more of like a commercial model. It's not really a consumer facing product that much. So they only really have Lightning and Mach-E, and those two are like holding strong, and they're producing decent enough volume to claim this title of number 2. But I am just like, I want more from them. Like, is that bad for me to ask? Like,
it's
they only have 2.
The F-150 Lightning could be a bolt killer.
If you can get one cheap enough, it's great.
By rolling over it.
I love the one that by rolling over it. Literally in this case. No, I love the one I had for 10 days in Texas. I'm giving it a pretty glowing review when I get a chance to write it. But like, I think it's a good year for Ford overall.
Yeah.
Those 3 models, those are new models that are pretty high tech. They're more modern than the Bolt is. I think that Ford probably was wise to sort of look at where demand is going after the early adopter wave and sort of dial this back a little bit. Like, I think it was like business wise was probably a smart thing to do. Like, they had a good year overall. Like the Lightning is still America's best selling electric pickup truck. Sure, it's one of the only ones out there, but like, I think that they could really use a much more affordable model here, like cheaper than a Mach-E, and I think that would help a lot with what they're trying to do. But like, I think this was overall a win, and like, I was impressed with Blue Cruise. I was impressed with everything about the Lightning, the charging speeds, range overall. Highway's not amazing because it's a big brick, but like, I mean, I don't know. I think that they're more on the right path that people give them credit for. But
I agree.
We're gonna see how this year goes for them.
Yeah, I mean, the F-150 Lightning, if you look at that compared to something like the Hummer pickup or something, like it's, I mean, obviously from my European perspective, none of these are sensible cars. But if I had to pick one, the F-150 Lightning seems much more seriously like a sensible car than something like the Hummer EV.
Oh yeah.
The usability is just insane with how many ports that you can use for the, plugging in and utilizing it for work tools and things like that, or camping or whatnot. And then that huge frunk is just
you can fill
incredible.
That frunk with so much shrimp.
Like, yeah,
exactly.
all the shrimp. It's bigger than most New York City apartments. Like, I think I'm just gonna buy a Lightning and live in the frunk, and my rent's gonna go down so much.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, it's neat, but like, it's also interesting with Ford, real quick too, is like they're very adamant that like Lightning and Mach-E, that's rough draft stuff. It's like the future is like the T3 platform. They've learned a lot from Tesla and the Chinese automakers. It's like they know that this is like, they've got to cut down the wiring. They've got to make stuff that's not just like an existing platform full of batteries. Like, okay, so if the current Lightning is this good, like, I think that they're going to do good stuff in the future. But
I agree.
Yeah,
eager to see how this shakes out. And then I think as far as other trucks and startups, we're not going to go through every sales figure on this because we would bore you all to death. But I think Rivian ended up having a pretty good year. Everyone loves Rivian. Loves seeing the big trucks everywhere that make people happy. And they had a pretty they kind of pull out of some slumps last year. Seems like, right?
Yes, they did. So they had a pretty good year, a much better year than the previous. So you can see their sales are increasing. You can see that overall, production's up, everything's happening. But they did actually sell slightly less in Q4 than Q3, which we don't know why. They haven't told us. And yeah,
I have a thought there. Because they're including EDV on this, right? The EDV, the van or whatever.
Oh yes,
so
that's a very
Amazon actually like told them hold off and do not deliver the vans because they wanted to. I guess they had some like prep work in order to prepare for 2024, but they also didn't like want to have those on the books for some reason. So there were pictures of like EDVs lined up at the Rivian plant, like stacked, like the parking lots were full of EDVs. So, and I'm not saying necessarily that the amount that they're missing here with the deliveries, but that does contribute to, I'm sure, why they didn't hit certain figures for that quarter, because they were holding off on a lot of EDVs at the end of the year, because Amazon was like, just hold off a second before you get us these.
Yeah, that's interesting actually, because I mean it's not a very big gap, to be fair. It's Q3 with 15,500 and Q4 is just shy of 14,000. So like it's not.
Yeah, that
it's
could
not
do it then.
a huge thing, but yeah, that could well be an amount that, yeah, like just over 1,500 vehicles. That sounds like it could be a fleet delivery. Yeah.
By the way, I see those everywhere now. Like, and I know I'm in Michigan, which they have a place here. I think it used to be their headquarters, but then they moved their headquarters to California, but before the Florida headquarters. But anyways, the EDVs are everywhere. I went out to go run errands the other day, and literally I saw 8 of them, and I was just like, wow! Like I didn't even see one of them like halfway through last year out in this area. So they're really starting to hit the ground running with those.
I'm a little annoyed with those things just because I see them all over New York City, and they're huge. They take up like an entire city block, and when they park in narrow streets, like nothing can get past them. But this is a really like me specific gripe,
yes.
And everywhere else in America, it's like, oh, that's like, it's like fine, you know. But I kind of like, when I see one of those,
maybe they should have a city version that's like a little bit miniaturized or something.
Do a little transit thing. I think would probably do well, and be more affordable. But I don't know. Other than that,
and help out
blocked by them. Yeah, other than being blocked by them all the time, the EDVs fine in my book. You know, so good for them.
Yep.
We've got like a shock reveal as the final sales singer, but something that's nice and good is Kia doing well. We all love Kia. We like their EVs and generally kind of what they've been coming out with. And it seems like everyone else likes them too. They had a very good US sales year in 2023, and in Q4 specifically just in December, the EV9, which is the new large vehicle that we were very into, sold 1,113 units, which is almost equal to the EV6. So clearly they played that right. They did guess that the American market was where to put that, and it's working.
I'm so happy about the EV9, and it just won the NACTOY, guys. The North American Utility of the Year is what it won. Just yesterday, they announced the winners for that, for the truck utility and car of the year. If you don't know what that is, definitely give it a Google. But basically, it's a bunch of journalists who drive a bunch of different vehicles that are submitted throughout the, testing and stuff like that. They decide who are the finalists, and then they reveal the winner of the year after spending a lot of time. And a lot of different journalists get to put in their vote. So that was pretty cool. But I think a third row SUV in this price point is like so needed as far as electric vehicles go. So I'm really happy to see already the first month of them churning them out.
Yeah. I mean, Americans, we love, apple pie, baseball, 24-hour cable news, and large
Big
3-row
cars.
SUVs. And like, I think this thing, it looks amazing. I think a lot of people are going to look at it and not realize it's electric at all, and then be like, oh, the range is great on it. Like, that thing is going to do really well this year for Kia. It's going to print money. Fun fact too is like when they came out with EV9, which I think that does. My theory is that the original design became the EV5, the smaller one.
Yeah.
But it was supposed to be smaller than this, and then they looked at how hugely successful the Kia Telluride was in America. They kind of put that brand on the map in a modern way. They're like, oh, make it bigger, and it's working, and like it's really nice inside, and everybody in America wants the minivan. Nobody wants to admit they want the minivan, but like this is a much more stylish and sleek and sexy way of hauling a lot of people and stuff. So I think this thing's going to crush it this year. There's already some discounts we've seen out there on this thing too. Like, I mean, thousands knocked off. So I don't know. This is the one to beat, I think, and the one to watch in 24.
It's kind of amazing that like a US automaker hasn't managed to come out with one of these, and it's Kia that's been like, you know what these people like? This thing.
Yeah, and Rivian has their R1S, but it's still like a higher price point, and it's more like in the premium segment than this. So I love that this lower price point, I think, is down into the 50s.
Wow.
If I'm correct there, but that's just an amazing price point for such a big vehicle. And I mean, just like Hyundai and Kia have been killing it as far as efficiency goes with their models. Of course, I would like to see more, closer to 400 miles of range, but that's just me.
Yeah, too. I like the Koreans. It's like when they say they're going to do this stuff, they actually do it. Like, it's like, here are the models we're coming out with, and then they come out and like they get really good reviews. And it's not like, oh, that thing we announced, we punted it back 2 years, and also it's $20,000 more than we said it was. Oops.
Yeah.
Like, they actually make good on their promises. And like, I think that if we're not speaking of Kia and Hyundai in the same breath as Tesla and BYD at the end of this year, like we all should be. And I think that perception is going to change. Speaking of, do we want to talk about the shock news out of China this week?
Yes. So obviously a lot of these sales figures that we're talking about are US only. And we are sort of, because there's a bias here, and that's what we talk about.
Sorry about that, everyone.
But with Tesla, of course, they are a global brand, whereas I don't think Ford have tried to sell very many F-150 Lightnings in London. And Tesla's Q4 figure of 484,507 deliveries is looking at the worldwide figure, not specifically only the US, which it's still lower than BYD's overall figure for Q4 deliveries of purely electric vehicles. BYD slightly confusingly report their figures in a way where they somewhat try and lump PHEVs in with, or try and categorize all vehicles that have a charging port as roughly similar. But the purely battery electric vehicles alone is 526,409. So they've sold over 500,000 purely EV cars in Q4, which means they are the biggest global EV brand above Tesla, which that's pretty big news, given how much Tesla, when you think about the gap between Tesla and basically anyone else.
It's worth noting that, like, still the bulk of BYD's sales are in China, but that is changing very quickly. They're building a factory in Hungary. They're expanding quickly into Europe. They're almost certainly going to announce and build a factory in Mexico at some point this year. And they've been very clear they want to get into the North American market eventually. They're stopped because they're Chinese, and like American tariffs on Chinese cars are really intense. But they could say screw it and just do it anyway. Because interestingly, like, BYD is a company, they're very profitable, and they're also kind of comfortable with slim profit margins, unlike the other automakers, which sort of depend on the fat from up top. But it's big news. I mean, it's like, what's interesting is that there's people like us that have been kind of knew what BYD was, been following it a while, and then there's the rest of the world that now, as of this week, is like, what the hell is this company? Like, there's like the BBC's reporting on like what's BYD, and like, it's kind of put them on the map in a way that I've never seen before. And that's gonna be really interesting to see how they go in the next few years. Like, I think their cars look great. The ones I've never driven one. The interiors I saw in Europe look like world class. I'm eager to get behind the wheel at some point, but not a threat to the other automakers yet, but like really close to that. And I mean, I don't know I'd love to hear what you think on this milestone, Lacey, too.
I mean, it does not surprise me. Like, they do sell a lot of plug-in hybrids. So I think, is this figure including plug-in hybrids as well?
No,
like, technically,
EVs.
Okay, pure EVs. So that's great. But I mean, even still, like, considering electrification as a total, like, they are dominating. And I'm not surprised by it. You know, we've been saying like, watch out, here comes China. And yeah, the tariffs are holding them off right now, but I don't think that it's going to be too much longer that they somehow get into the US market. Like, I don't know, maybe the next couple of years, I'm thinking that something is going to happen where they're going to start selling in our market. And right now there is a door that's wide open to be able to sell here. And I know a lot of people are like, well, you know, they're Chinese and people won't buy Chinese EVs. But when you have such a value,
right price.
Yeah, exactly. It's price talks. Like people will buy and people will realize how nice they are. I mean, people buy Polestars and Volvos. I know that they don't traditionally think them as Chinese because they're veiled by their, you know, legacy brands of the Swedish, you know, car companies. But I think that it's going to be no surprise that BYD continues to dominate as far as fully electric sales. And, you know, Tesla, they have a lot of work to do to try to, you know, come out on top again if they want to keep a title like that.
It's a fascinating situation too, because like BYD can easily follow the same playbook in America, for like that Volkswagen, Toyota, Hyundai all did. You know, you come in cheap, build up the brand, build up the brand loyalty, and sort of go up from there. Like that exists, but it's like this is the first time I believe that it's like this is coming from a country that's such a geopolitical adversary of the United States and has all these IP concerns and security concerns. And I mean, so much of the tax credits, which I think we're going to talk about in a minute, is aimed at like screwing over China. It's just like, I think we're all totally agreed that like no buyer's really going to care if the price is good, but like it's fascinating to see like there is potential for a takeover of this market from a country that like is not really our friend, and like it has a government that like does not do awesome stuff. To put it very simply, like I don't know how that's going to net out. Like this is not South Korea and Japan we're talking about. You know, it's a country that we've talked about. I don't know. We're going to go to World War III with at some point. So I don't know how this nets out, but this is about unprecedented what we're staring down here.
It's also like in the context of other automakers, because for a long time, for like 4 or 5 years, a lot of concepts that other automakers, like especially the European brands, have been coming out with have been squarely aimed at this sort of nebulous concept of the Chinese market. And there's specific sort of luxury cars. There's all kinds of things that are allegedly exactly what the Chinese market want. I don't really know if that's particularly true, but things like the Audi Sphere concepts were all very much angled that way. And that was their justification. If you ever asked them why they were making these kind of dystopian boats of cars, they're because a lot of automakers in their search for EV profitability have been saying, and we're going to expand into China, and we're going to do this in China, and they're going to be able to take advantage of this gigantic market. It kind of seems like BYD sort of sewn that up. So maybe it's time for everyone else to sort of refocus and very much more look at what they have to do at home.
Also, Dystopian Boats. Dystopian Boats is the name of the new band I'm starting.
Hello, Cleveland. We are Dystopian Boats.
It does have a very like Arctic Monkeys, like British Invasion 2.0 vibe to it. That name, so especially in that accent. So yeah, everyone watch out for the Dystopian Boats coming from BYD soon. But yeah, they're not done yet.
No, definitely not. And I think, yeah, the thing is, like, the BYD don't make, because I think a lot of people have this idea of like a Chinese electric vehicle, and it looks like if someone was asked to imagine one, they might sort of think of something quite cheaply put together that has naff range, that doesn't sort of look like it's got a particularly safe interior or whatever. But that's not what BYD are making. Patrick, because I've ridden in one, but I haven't driven one. But you saw some at a car show, right?
Yeah, I was at IAA Munich last year, the big German auto show, and I remember 10 years ago in Detroit, because a couple of Chinese automakers like had small appearances at the U.S. auto shows for a couple years, and those look like communism Corollas. I mean, like they were just really. It's like, oh, that's a car. You made a car, good for you guys. And now I'm seeing the inside of these BYDs I saw in Germany. It looks like a McLaren meets a Tesla inside. I mean, I was like, this looks really world class. Like, those are very handsome vehicles. The range seems to be great. I've talked to a lot of members of the English motoring press who, I think are some very tough critics, generally speaking. And they speak very highly of these cars to drive. They're like, they're better than you think. So this is not a brand that's to be mocked or underestimated anymore,
Yeah. So, oh, sorry, Lacey, carry on.
No worries. I was just saying, yeah, I completely agree.
So yeah, it's BYD versus Tesla. Whoever wins, possibly Ford and GM lose for 2024, I guess. Relatedly, and a barrier for BYD, the tax credits that are available for purchasing an EV have been radically revised as of now. Which means that of 43 previously eligible models, there are now only 19 cars that you can get a tax credit discount on. Patrick, you actually wrote the article about this, so I'm going to pick on you to explain what's going on here.
Yeah, so the cars, the list of cars that are eligible for the EV tax credit, plug-in hybrid tax credit for 2024, that list is out, and it sucks. This has been so heavily revised right now that very few cars qualify for any sort of tax break anymore. The TV example of how hilarious this is, the only General Motors EV that qualifies for any tax break as of right now is the Chevrolet Bolt, which was discontinued in December and is like whatever's on dealer lots, it's there until they run out. And none of the others do. So I think that there's some positive news here is that all the automakers are saying, look, we're kind of redoing how our cars are assessed. We're submitting our paperwork to the IRS. We're sort of making a case for these things. Like, more cars are going to get added to the credit list. Like, Volkswagen is very confident that the ID4, which is made in America with batteries made in America, that will get the tax credit soon. But for now, it's not great. And it's unbelievably obtuse and complicated why this is. And it's like they revise the tax credits to cut down cars that have certain battery materials from a quote unquote foreign entity of concern, and that means China. And that's a really loose definition. It's like, is it a Chinese, is it some minerals owned by like a Chinese owned company or a subsidiary of a Chinese company? Like, China so owns the supply chain around EV batteries, like top to bottom, that getting anything that doesn't have anything to do with China has been really hard. And like, long term, more cars will qualify for the tax credit. But like, I think this sucks. I think it's like, if our goal, if the Biden administration's goal was to get more zero emissions cars on the road, like, this falls really short of that goal. I mean, it'll I guess cut off China at the knees, but I don't know. They're sure not hurting them too much, considering how well BYD's doing at the moment. So I don't know. Expect more cars to get added, but this is hugely disappointing at the start of 24. I mean, Lacey, what do we think?
I've been saying this for a long time, ever since I saw this whole program come out, was that this is not a means to get more electric cars on the road. I mean, they try to tout it that, as the administration says, like, and it has become a very political issue, which unfortunately I think is just like tragic, because I just don't think, like, we're into the stages where now people are buying EVs just because they're either better vehicles or they're realizing the actual benefits of switching to an EV, and that has nothing to do with them wanting to necessarily be like environmentally friendly. So in order to like get that transition going, you would think that they would want to just like slap on 7,500 for no matter what EV it is. But this, from the start, to me was always like, oh, this is just pushing China out. This is just us trying to prop up the American automakers so that they can actually have a chance. They have a fighting chance to be able to survive in this transition to going electric. Because if you look And this is a problem with Americans, I think a lot of the time, is that they just seem to think about the American market and they don't look at it as a global automotive market and see what's happening at other parts of the world. But if you do look at it from a global perspective, like you said, China dominates EVs, and they have for a long time. For over a decade, they have subsidized producing EVs in their country, and they've gotten really, really great at it. And while they were doing that, like, we were just, haphazardly
making Suburbans and Escalades.
Yeah, and then like you cap it at 200,000 units for the previous tax credit of $7,500. So it's like, I don't know. To me, it's never been like we're trying to get more EVs on the road. It's always been we're trying to make an American economy survive in the transition of going electric. I feel like it's kind of late, but in order to do that, we need to force suppliers to make stuff here in the North American market, or with friendly, like you said, foreign entities of concern, which is China, Iran, and Russia, basically. So, we need to get that supply chain rolling here, but it's just going to take a long time. It's not like something that can just happen overnight. And that's what I think is going to be just a huge problem in the coming years, because these ratchet up every year. The percentages of the critical minerals and the battery components, which are the two ways that you can get the incentive, is you have to have a certain percentage of those critical minerals in the battery. And then you also have the certain percentage of the battery components being produced in these friendly countries or North American market. Yeah. So amongst all the other qualifications, like you have to make a certain amount of money, you have to, all of these things. I do think that the point of sale incentive is really great, that this is going to be going through the dealers now. And I think we have a story even on that like 7,000 dealers have applied for that to be able to use the tax incentive immediately at the point of sale. But yeah. It's always been a China thing to me. So I've always seen it that way. So, and I think that if people actually thought of it that way, then they would have a different perspective on, the political side of it, that this is actually because, most people that are skewed in, the more conservative realm, they want to drive American. They want an American energy. They want all these things. And that's really what this is designed to do, is to like prop up the American auto industry and suppliers here.
And I've said this before, but I wish what they had done with this was said to all these automakers, like, look, you all get, if you're EV or plug-in hybrid, you all get the tax credit until, I don't know, 2026 or something, like Jan 1 or 25 or something. After that, that car, those batteries, those minerals, they better be made in America or you're SOL. Like, govern yourselves accordingly, get to work. And I think that would have done both. But it helps to remember also, like Lacey's point about how political this was, like how compromised the Inflation Reduction Act, which drives these credits, was. And it was held up by, the Republicans in Congress. It was held up by Joe Manchin, one senator, one, conservative leaning Democrat. And even the name of it was changed to sort of placate him, the Inflation Reduction Act. And I don't think a lot of this environmental stuff had much to do with reducing inflation. It was like just the sort of omnibus, Biden stuff that happened. But like, it was like whatever idea we went in with, it went through so many rounds of compromise and politicizing that, I don't know, the net result's going to be odd. I think that the tough thing here too is, like, we could talk about minerals and tax credits and all this crap all day long, but like your average person does not understand this stuff at all, because it is so esoteric and weird and complicated. And I had a conversation with some friends of mine.
Because the system was already really complicated. Yeah. And like working out if you were eligible, if the vehicle was eligible, if like the moon was in the correct position for you to file this particular form. Like,
on the fourth Tuesday of every month, but only before 12:00 p.m. It's like I talked to some friends over the holiday. They were like, they're just normal civilians. They're not car weirdos like us. And they were like, yeah, we're going to get an EV. So don't they all get the tax credit? And I'm like, I just go to this diatribe about Chinese minerals, and I guarantee you, I lost those people like 30 seconds into that conversation. Like they just left to go do something else. So it's confounding. But I think, like to what Lacey said, the good news here is that this year it's applied at the point of sale, meaning it's not a thing you file on your taxes later and get a credit later. You get this discount when you get the car. And that's awesome. That's a great move. I think it's going to help the the tiny list of vehicles that are on there, including America's best-selling hybrid, the Jeep Grand Cherokee 4X. I'm sorry, it's the Jeep Wrangler 4xe. I was going to kick out the fact that that's America's best-selling plug-in hybrid. Is the Jeep Wrangler. It says a lot about us. But I don't know. Just I think if you're
congratulations to Stellantis.
Yeah.
Finally
who doesn't even
their way
sell
to the top of something.
Yeah, I don't know. If you're interested in getting an EV this year, it's like just check out InsideEVs.com, talk to your dealer, Google a bit, but you're gonna need to do a little bit of homework, and it's not the easiest thing in the world.
Related to talking to your dealer, and as Lacey mentioned earlier, there is also the bad news is that fewer vehicles qualify for the tax credit. The good news is that it might be a lot easier to apply it, and that 7,000 US car dealers who, as I understand it, are not usually characterized as helpful or particularly perhaps kind of interested in the customer experience people, but they have signed up to do this EV credit reduction at the point of sale. So when you turn up and you buy your car, you can get the whatever tax credit is. Some of them are eligible for the full 7,500. Some of them only qualify for half of that, depending on how hybrid they are and things. And that will come off the price of the car on the lot, not as a complicated thing that you can offset later in the year and hope that you pay enough tax for that to all kind of shake out. Is this a win for car dealers? Lacey, you work with a lot of, or you do a lot of education around these things.
Yes, it's a good number to see, but also I'm curious, is this like dealer groups also applying? Like, do they apply as like, does each location have to apply?
Ooh, good question.
Or is it their group? That's what I was wondering with this, because that would change my mentality depending on what it really means. I mean, there are like tens of thousands of dealers, so like it's but a lot of brands share dealers, so that's the other side of it, is that you might have Mercedes under one roof, but you also have in that same group BMW or whatever, like there are a lot of combined elements.
Your general EU US car dealer lot.
Yeah, exactly. So if it means that they are doing this as a group effort, I think that's, that's great. I hope that's the case, but I'm just unsure about what that figure is.
Yeah. That's a very good point. I mean, also, this, although it's very heartening to see 7,000 dealers signing up to this, there have also been obviously a large amount of resistance to EVs from dealers, especially last year. But that said, I mean, these are all kind of like deep in the weeds things we worry about. But ultimately, Patrick, if your friends that were thinking about buying an EV turned up and that complicated tax credit was just done by the dealer at the time, presumably that would be quite a major incentive in terms of actually of getting it out the door.
Yeah, for sure.
Does this point of sale also include, is it only new cars that they've signed up as a portal, or does this also include like them doing the used? Like, is it the same application process where they just check a box where they're like, I want the new tax credit and I want the used tax credit? Because also it's like some are just strictly used car dealerships. So, yeah, I don't know. I got a lot of questions. You're muted.
That is, yeah. Sorry, I was muted because I was like literally Googling this right now, and like I didn't think to look into that. I think it actually does. Yeah, according to Autoblog. Yeah, sorry to cite a competitor here as we're doing the podcast, but that's up to date information when you want it. It does include used EVs at the point of sale too. So like that's a great deal, and very good question to ask. Probably worth a story at some point too, Yeah, just the clarity of it, because that changes the game too, because some of these dealers don't sell anything but used. So, which is a good thing that the used dealers are getting in there, even if they're not like a typical, big group that you would expect. We love to see that.
Yeah, I mean, especially like we were talking earlier about the potential for used bolts to be really pretty cheap this year. If it's cheap and it's really easy, then that's something that's going to be very attractive if they're sitting around on lots, which they might well not be, because people might be keeping hold of them and not upgrading to their Ultium platform cars like GM are hoping. But yes, an overall good thing. Another discount, which we also referenced just earlier. So GM basically have nothing that is eligible for the current tax credits as things stand, and of course presumably that will improve and they will be added to the list. But in order to remain competitive, GM has said that it will pay the 7,500, or well, it will take that just straight off the price of its cars, which, I mean, this is a pretty big statement for GM to make, both in terms of how important it thinks those tax credits are for making the cars competitive, and also like this in an era where everyone's worrying about those margins, worrying about the profitability, worrying about whatever. This seems like a very, not out of character, but it's quite a radical decision from such a big company. What's your take on this, Lacey?
You know, Ford did this before the end of the year, so I think it's that they're just kind of taking a play out of their book, to be fair. But it'll be interesting to see when they actually qualify for the true incentive of $7,500, and if they decide. I'm just so interested to see what the sales are going to be like this year, because with interest rates still being high, I mean, they are going to start to go down this year a couple times. I think they said that there's like 3 introductions of lower interest rates, but still they're going to be, it's not like they're going back down to like 2% or something like that. You know, it's going to still be, I think, relatively expensive for people to finance. And so will GM continue to do the $7,500 once they see the ramp up of the sales happen throughout the year, and then they qualify for the $7,500 from the federal tax incentive? What's going to happen here? Are we going to start to actually see the market of cars come back to more realistic figures? Like, dealers are going to have to take away their markdown or markups. They're going to have to take away like expecting MSRP for cars. Like, I hope so. I think it might happen this year.
Most things I've read, and some of the OEMs themselves, they're expecting a flatter year of car sales, or if not down a bit, because like last year was a record year. It was the best year car sales period. I'm not talking about EVs, but everything. It was the best year since the pandemic started. And it you know, it's what we've seen in the past is when you have those insane years of sales, like, I don't know, demand gets satisfied. It's not up to the right growth forever. I think Hyundai is projecting like a 2% sales increase this year over year, like globally. So like they're being real conservative because of interest rates and everything. So, and I think in the EV market specifically, it's going to be a narrower year, because everyone's sort of waiting for, in America, to go to like the NACS plug that Tesla uses. I think a lot of people will wait and see for that. So it's going to be a bit more of a just plateauing year this time than the explosive growth we all got or thought we'd get last year.
Related to the NACS plug, and one of 2 Cybertruck charging stories for this week. Now we've managed to get through all of the numbers there and all of the tax credits, a very thrilling subject. Getting into the actual business of driving EVs, it seems as though the Cybertruck bodywork basically completely rejects chargers that are not an ACS. So if you are using a trying to use a conversion from CCS to NACS to plug it in, the bodywork will physically stop you being able to do that, meaning that it basically is restricted to Tesla chargers. Does this matter given the direction that everyone seems to be going in for NACS? What do you think?
I think it's terrible design. I'm sorry. Like, what? It's what the hell? Like, I don't know. This is baffling to me. And it's like, you know, surely there are going to be times where these owners are going to have to use that adapter, and it works like that. Like I'm stunned that this isn't getting more attention, and it's just like it shows you how freakishly compromised the design of this truck was. And like maybe they are just anticipating a future where they say screw it, we're all going to be on NACS anyway, so like why does this matter, which is a very Tesla thing to do. But like it's I saw that, I'm stunned that that's the case.
I don't know if I'm as stunned. I mean, are they going to come out with their own like adapter for this? Because I know obviously that Tesla provides a CCS adapter for the other models, and some of the models had to get chip upgrades in order to accept it. But this being a new product, it should have all that capability. But to me, it just seems like maybe they would introduce a new adapter that would be more elegant of a solution here, but that's not really a priority considering they think most people will just use superchargers. But I know this is really important in the California market because there are a lot of queues for supercharging stations out there. But to be fair, that's a big issue in California, but not really much anywhere else. But people should have the flexibility that they want to go charge wherever they want to and wherever they can. So it is kind of a bummer, but I mean, I'm not really that surprised because I think are prioritizing getting the adapters for everyone else to jump onto the supercharging network versus getting something available for Cybertruck.
Do we think this was deliberate, or is it just clumsy?
I don't think that they would not think of this.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I have too much confidence in them, but I think they're very smart people, and I think that they are intentionally like not providing this solution.
I tell you, that's a hell of a risk to take for this thing when you're out and about, and we know how ubiquitous the superchargers are, but just like I just think it's a weird thing to do right now, in 24. So we'll see. Good luck to all the Cybertruck owners out there when this happens. All 20 of them, or whoever they are right now.
Yes, and one of the Cybertruck owners, or someone who has a Cybertruck, has been looking at charging once they've managed to find a suitable plug. And the other Cybertruck charging story for this week is that there is a massive drop-off in charging rate across a charge cycle for the Cybertruck, or it seems to be. Plugged into a supercharger with on a YouTube video by our Cyber Life, which apparently is very difficult for me to say, with a preconditioned battery, so it should have been in great condition for everything that they're about to do with it. Initially, the Cybertruck charged at higher than its alleged peak charging, so 255 kilowatts, and then dropped to 150 at 40% SOC, 100 at 60% SOC, and 80 at 80. So it dropped off very, very fast, which generally seems not quite in line with how we understand Tesla batteries charge. It's a little bit unusual. But there aren't very many Cybertrucks out there, and there are, to be fair, and because people are going to point this out, quite a lot of factors in this, including the fact that the supercharger station they were at was allegedly very crowded. So it's possible that it was the charger itself stifling the electricity, not the car. Yeah. Lacey, you've been charging a truck recently.
Yes.
What would you think if this happened to your Rivian?
Well, I think what is interesting here with Cybertruck is that we're seeing, there was a lot of promises on Battery Day with how 4680 would perform. And I think people generally, even if they were to meet certain, goals for that particular form factor, they've gone through some upgrades and stuff like that. But it just does not seem like the performance is as good as what people want it to be. And to me, in charging both of my Teslas, like you hit the peak rate at a low state of charge, and then it really starts to drop down rather quickly. So the curve isn't really all that like flat, like what you would want or expect for the full charging session either way. to me, this is a split pack. So for those of you who haven't heard this about the Cybertruck, essentially it's a 400-volt system. So it will be able to charge on the V4 supercharging stations that I think are like 1,000 volt or something higher amperage, so that you can really pull like a 350 kilowatt rate. And the Tesla employees have confirmed that this is going to be able to charge at higher rates like that because it's designed as a split pack. But to me, like I'm not like dissatisfied necessarily, because for the most part, I think people just need to change their perspective on how they charge. Like basically there are enough stations now where you can charge to get enough of what you want and then move on. You don't need to like go to 100% or even past like 80% most of the time. Like you can choose to, but it's really incentivizing people to just get off the charger, especially in places like I said in California where they're so busy. Like, yes, you're going to get the most regardless at the lower end of state of charge for these batteries, but don't sit around and take up all this time and space to charge to 100% because you don't necessarily need to. So I don't know. I'm not really concerned, and I could see Tesla, coming out with a software update once these get rolling and there's more volume and they're learning more as more of them hit the road in real life situations, and change the curve or change the performance of how this is all operating. So to me, it's kind of early to make 100%, decisions on stuff like this.
Yeah, I think Mark Kane's story about that on InsideEVs, he was very fair and very thorough, and it was just like there was a lot of hyperbole around this, and it's like everything you said, Lacey. It's like yes and no, and there's software updates coming. There's so few of them on the road right now, it doesn't really matter. It's like there's I have thoughts on the Cybertruck. I felt like this particular criticism was like, well, this is a little more addressable than other things, but we'll see once a billion of them are on the road and it's replaced the Ford F-150 as the top selling vehicle in America, which, everyone on X keeps telling me that's what's going to happen.
Yes, there will be Cybertrucks on Cybertrucks. Every parking lot will be filled with these things, and they are definitely real and definitely coming.
We're just waiting for our VIN. We got the confirmation for submitting the rest of the deposit, so we're gonna get a foundation series maybe this month. Who knows? We'll see.
Is that gonna be your personal vehicle, or are you gonna Turo it?
It's Tim. So yeah, he's taking delivery as his personal vehicle. So I think he might Turo it for the first, because he has a couple on order, which is just ridiculous and kind of silly. But he was thinking that the one that he just submitted for was the dual motor. And he wants to get the extended range battery. So who knows if that will be anytime soon for that particular version. But yeah, that's going to be his daily driver.
All I'll say is
I am excited for you to podcast from inside the Cybertruck.
Yes, please. Like I've rolled my eyes at this thing so many times, but it's like if you said to me you want to drive one, like I'd be there in like 2 minutes. Like of course I'm curious about it and want to experience it. How could you say no to that? So 24 is the year of the Cybertruck. I'm happy for you, Lacey. Congrats.
We'll see. I mean,
I just want to.
We'll be making videos.
Yeah.
Yes. Maybe one day I will see one of these things in real life. That probably after an admin heavy and tax exhaustive and sales reports episode, we have finally got to the end of news. For now, there will of course be more next week when hopefully Alex will be back and more coherent than me. In the meantime, thank you so much to our producer Danny Howard for making us all look and sound good, to Patrick for bringing the insight, and also to Lacey for of course being here and being our resident truck haver and charging expert. If I have forgotten what the contact address is for if anyone wants to get in touch. Patrick, do you know it?
Oh, just team@InsideEVs.com is a good way to get in touch. Yes,
And to note, Patrick and I are going to CES. So if you guys even have a thing you want us to go check out or whatever, stay tuned this week, or I think it's this upcoming week or next week or whatever. definitely write to us on social media or whatever if there's something that you want us to look at or cover or whatnot, because there's going to be a lot going on there.
Yeah, it won't be as busy as last year, but I think there's plenty to cover. And if you're around, hit us up for sure. I'm looking forward to talking about what we see and report on in next week's episode.
And of course, follow Lacey and Patrick and Inside EVs on social media for updates from CES, photos of cars, and probably some photos of cocktails and things. I assume that's the sort of thing. I've never been to CES. So
dry January lasted 3 days at our house. So yes, that would that will probably happen.
So yes, thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening. We will be back next week with even more stuff. And that's the end of it for now. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.